So we can't deal with Fauvism if we don't deal with one of its primary characters, Henri Matisse. Now, Matisse begins studying art around 1890, and by the late 1890s, he's pursuing ideas brought to us by Seurat in terms of pointillism. He's also looking at the art of Toulouse-Lautrec and Cezanne. In 1898, he begins to experiment with figures, still life, and non-representative color, which should sound familiar. It's really sort of that basis of Fauvism. In 1900, he meets André Derain and completes this group of Fauves. Of course, there are other artists as well. But I want to look at some of his early works. And his early works are not Fauvist. Here we're seeing really the evolution of the artist from where you would expect an artist at the end of the 19th century to be to what we know him for today. So we start with the dinner table. And when we look at this, there's nothing Fauvist about it. The colors are normal. The representation is fairly normal. It's more along the lines of something we would see from Cezanne or maybe Van Gogh. Realistic with little elements of simplification and abstraction that tell us that there's something else going on. Now, this painting was not well received amongst more conservative art critics, and there were a lot of them at the time. Remember, we have a separation at this point in history between people and artistic traditions that are more conservative and ones that are more avant-garde. At first glance, this is traditional. Of course, the table takes on this somewhat unusual tilt. When you look at it, the surface of the table itself doesn't seem to match with the room or our perspective or really the things on it. It's off a little bit. It's a very impressionist use of color as well, picking this descriptive color but then not laying it out in a very realistic way. We have this abbreviation of form that we tend to get when the Impressionists are trying to capture those fleeting moments. Now, there's another piece we want to look at, which moves us ahead from about 1896 to about 1900, and here we see Male Model. Now, this takes that simplification one step further. Here, Matisse is distorting and almost removing any sense of depth or perspective. We've created something known as a planar study. In other words, breaking the body down into flat planes and then applying local color to those. Almost like if you took a human body and turned it into a stormtrooper with all those flat pieces of plastic that they wear. We see a very conventional subject with an increasingly modern take. This simplification that ultimately will lead to abstraction. So we have accurate color, but the form has been simplified. We're one step closer to what we would expect from the Fauves. And here we see similarities to a very famous painting that we're not going to get away from in this class, Cezanne's Apples. And in the apples, it's again color that's accurate, but simplification. So you get these distortions because it doesn't really matter that things are distorted. Or it's the artist saying, hey, I have the power to distort whatever I want. I am the artist. This is something that I can take on. So when you look at those apples, they're simply spheres in the right color that give us the idea of an apple. This is Cezanne giving us the idea of a form. Just like here, we see the idea of a man, that simplification. We all know what it is, but we haven't seen it that simplified. So he's trying to figure out how little information can he give us that we can still interpret properly. So we see a very traditional academic form transformed to become an early modernist work. And then we're going to start to move into the Fauvist period.